Do you got any cool or interesting Jack Palmer stories?
Stories I can tell online?
Some.
You're listening to the Foundry Talk podcast with your hosts, Nate McLain and Perry Merritt. Take it away, boys.
Welcome back to the Foundry Talk podcast. My name is Perry. With me, as always, is my partner, Nate McLain. And with us today, we have Jim Gauldin. Jim is president of Palmer Manufacturing, and we've been having a little bit of a fun conversation this morning talking about Palmer's history. And Jim, I thought it would be interesting for you to just kind of tell that to our audience. Tell us how Palmer got started.
Palmer got started when Jack decided he was going to finally go to work for his dad. And that probably wasn't Jack's decision, to be honest. I'm sure Jim, Jack's dad, had drugged Jack by the scruff of the neck over to the foundry. But it's probably nothing new to Jack at that time because, as we all know, foundry gets in your blood, your family kind of gets to know it, etc. Jack was probably, honestly, excited about going over there and doing some work. But they started across the street from where I'm sitting now in a little shack. And this was all done in the evenings after other work. And they would just go and do foundry work for some period of time before they went back home for supper and bedtime. But as Jack and his dad were trying to find better ways to do things, they built their own mixer, trying to speed the process up. And at some point, one of their clients came through, looked at the mixer, and decided they wanted that mixer. Jack had refused to sell it to him before the client kind of slapped him upside the head and said, "Listen, boy, I'm offering you money for something. You ought to take it, just build you another one." And I think that's when the light clicked in Jack's head, and the idea about, well, yeah, maybe I should build equipment as well. It just kind of spiraled out of control from there.
So were these guys, were they actually had, I might get in trouble. Did they have real jobs during the day and then they were doing this as a, as a side job in the evenings, or how did that?
Well, now this was before child labor laws and all those things, but I think Jack was coming home from school and Jim knew the profitability of having a side job like a lot of those gentlemen did back then. They came out of that era where, if you were home during the war, you would buy a lathe and you would make small parts for the military. It was just part of what you did. So you might go work your standard job, come home at night, work five hours and produce something, and then just get up the next day and do it all over again. That was how they worked.
Yeah.
So they were actually they were running a foundry in the evenings. Is that's what Jack was doing at the time?
Yeah, Jack and his dad were running a small foundry. We've got photos of him laying on old transmission cases that they would bust up and put into the furnace for the next melt.
Yeah. Okay. And so they were using chemically bonded sand at the time.
At the time, yes. Yes.
So, silly question. Do you have any idea how they were doing it before that they made that first mixer?
I do not. It was probably something miserably difficult or hard for Jack, and he blocked it from his memory, and I never got that story.
Okay. Yeah.
Standing with a stick over the cauldron.
Who knows, right?
So that obviously turned into a wide array of equipment that Palmer Manufacturing does now. Anything that's going on at Palmer that you want to talk about? Any kind of technology you guys are coming out with that it's going to change the world, technology or foundry wise?
Well, we believe that our FMM, the flip mold machine, is gaining traction. We've got more of these out there now than we've had before. And the nice thing about it, the thing that's innovative, is that it puts the rollover and the carousel all in one unit. It allows a customer to set a cadence. It gives you more floor space. It's one of those things Jack always said was, he always said that It's just weird enough that people aren't sure that they want to try it yet. But the more we get out there, the more we showcase it, the more people get interested in it. It's got traction. It's a good thing.
So I'm the dummy here. What is this thing? I mean, I hear flip molding machine, but I'm trying to figure out, well, what does that look like? Is that a mold coming off of a line and it gets flipped over, or what is that thing?
So in the no-bake sand and in most foundry processes, we ram up molds, get them compacted, and then at some point you have to extract that sand out of the pattern box.
Oh, okay.
And for small boxes, a couple of guys flipping those things by hand, that might be very doable on a small scale. But as the scale ramps up, as things get bigger, as we study and we try to prevent workplace injuries, as we try to improve our lifestyle so we're not exhausted during the day, we try to mechanize things. And this is mechanization of something that's been done by hand for many years. The mechanization happened some time ago with a carousel rollover. The rollover would help extract the sand from the pattern box. The carousel fed that rollover, gave things time to set up. But they were two large pieces of equipment. Well, Jack always felt like the best thing to do was try to merge those two pieces together. So the way the FMM works now is much like a carousel, but each station has its own rollover built into it. So it allows the rollover, which is usually a large piece of equipment, and as Nate can contest, it's typically your bottleneck in the production line. It allows that rollover to be in 4 places, so you're constantly flipping, filling, rolling this over, extracting, and moving on.
Okay, so again, the dummy in the room. I get the idea of, especially with 3D printed molds, having to get sand out. I mean, normally, don't you just blow it out of there? Is that or is that what we're talking about? Are you turning the mold over just so the sand will fall out of it? Is that the
right? Yeah, you're flipping that mold over, and you are allowing that formed shape of the mold to come out of the pattern box.
Oh, okay.
And by doing this in this table, in this large round carousel device, you allow this to happen at a predicted cadence, and you don't have all this other equipment in the area, so you can put a mold loop in a much smaller area than you had before.
Okay. Yeah. I get it. Nate is sitting here smirking, thinking, "What an idiot."
No, not at all. I mean, because it is hard for somebody that's listening to understand it for sure. And one thing I would say is if you go to palmermfg.com, right at the top of their homepage, they have a video of the FMM running, and it kind of gives you an idea from station to station whether it gets filled, indexes in 90 degrees, and then flips, and then so all 4 stations in this regard are doing certain aspects. So yeah, it's pretty interesting to be able to see that from a top view and see how the operators are processing those molds. Really, really cool.
Well, and there you go. I mean, brilliance. Here's Nate. We're all trying to. Nate's got vision. We're wearing sunglasses. Nate's like, "Oh, just go to the website, right?" See, that's me. I'm an old guy, and I'm thinking podcasts. Like it's not visual anymore, right? Like even my kid is like, "Dad, don't try the new slang. Don't say skibidi and 6-7 and blueprint baddie or anything like that. You won't know how to use it. You'll just embarrass yourself."
That's so funny. 6-7.
And the new one, which is 41, and I still haven't figured that out yet.
I don't know that I'm going to try. That's funny. Yeah, well, and a lot of we have people that just listen to audio, and we have people that listen to that watch via video. So you kind of get the best of both worlds. So somebody that's interested and can't quite make the light bulb light up completely, I mean, going to the website would be definitely a good way of seeing how that stuff works.
Well, and your website's got a ton of stuff on it. when I was going through it, getting ready to talk to you this morning, and I was just wow. And we talked earlier about sand on trains, and that you provide a traction system for trains, and it's amazing the things that you guys are really doing.
Absolutely, that is one of those things that we look at our equipment and we try to decide, like, what else can we do with it? Where can we diversify into? What makes sense to keep Palmer, the right size, and keep things innovative and keep people interested. So there's many things that we do. Golf courses, we have a machine that cleans sand on the golf course. There's certain bacteria and stuff that go into those sand traps from the animals that walk around in the area. That sand is purchased. It's a very specific grain. A lot of times they get it out of England or other countries because they want that perfect white sand. It's almost like we're talking Foundry. They're talking grain size on the golf course, great, but we are in the Foundry talking grain size. The golf course's problem, like I noted, was animals tend to get into those sand traps, and after they're gone, if you have to dig around in there, it doesn't smell very pleasant, and golfers don't like that. So we made a piece of equipment that we can scoop that sand out, and it goes into a large heated tumbling device, and when it comes out the other end, it's white and pretty again. All the organics have been cooked off, so you don't smell any of the excrement anymore. They put it back into the sand traps. That type of diversification we're always looking for. We've gotten from the foundry into brick making plants, as well as you noted, the rail yard traction sand. Steel wheels on steel rails provide some slipping, potential for slipping, and locomotives, LRVs, people movers in large cities, they're always dealing with wheel slippage. So they have a system on these devices that sprays sand between the wheel and the rail, and that sand provides traction between these two steel devices. It's quite brilliant. It's been done since back in the steam engine days. Somehow that sand has to get in there, and the easier you make that happen, the better. So unlike Foundry, where we don't carry sand in wheelbarrows anymore. We move it pneumatically. We do the same thing for the rail industry. We provide sand and equipment that allows those companies to fill those sand boxes just like a gas pump. And that provides that consumable item to the piece of equipment and allows the operator to safely maneuver that piece of equipment along his route.
That is amazing. That's fascinating. And I would have never thought about it. Never really thought of it. But we talked, it was like, I could see it on snow and ice, but as our customers are out in Southern California, and it stays pretty warm and dry out there. But you're right, they do get this is metal on metal. Does it grind the rails down? Does it grind the wheels down?
To some extent, I'm sure that it does, but for the most part, you pulverize that material as you go over it.
Sure.
It provides traction momentarily, but there's enough weight between the two that it pulverizes down, just the same way that if you were in a quarry and you were sorting all your material, or you were pulverizing material down to certain sizes, it's the same thing. It adds that resistance needed, or that traction, right, for wet weather or leaves or emergency stopping.
I was just going to anecdotal comment was that you'd think that it would start to pile up in certain areas where they utilized it over time. There's somebody's out there with a vacuuming up all the pulverized sand.
Well,
a new product for them.
And that's what makes this industry so interesting to me, is that we actually have a piece of equipment that when they test the systems, it catches the sand and it moves it back over to the silo, because they don't want it in the yard. They don't want it in the test facility or the repair facility. So you can actually pull these trains up to a test area, hit the sanding button, that sand is collected underneath and pneumatically transferred back away, because otherwise it would pile up and you'd have to have somebody out there with a broom and a dustpan, right?
Sure. Yeah, got to think of it all. So a lot of the and I noticed you guys are still manufacturing pattern plates and bottom plates and things of that nature for no bake molding.
We do, yeah.
Yeah, they're there. Okay.
According to the website, they have over 15,000 on hand.
And there probably are. I should carry this, since it's video as well. I should carry it over there and we'll look at it all. But we do, and people are still using those pieces of equipment. Foundry industry, as you know, Nate, is notorious for using a piece of equipment till there's just nothing left, right? We see some pieces of equipment, pneumatic transporter pipes that have been welded and re-welded, and anything to save money, right? So it's not uncommon for them to continue to use these very old machines that require the bottom boards and pattern plates, and we are happily making them for those customers.
Sure.
So that brings up a question for me then. Is if that's the mindset of the foundry, just to use it until there's nothing left, what does Palmer do to kind of get in the door at places like that? I mean, you come in with brand new equipment, do they look at you like, oh, we can't do new equipment, we got to weld this pipe back together and keep it running? I mean, do you run into a lot of that when you or people are coming to you because they need a solution?
I think the short answer is yes, it's challenging. You walk in the front door and you're thinking to yourself, well, I see all the equipment from the outside. I know what I'm walking into, and I don't know what the reaction's going to be. And a lot of times we have customers who ask us, can we keep this other piece of equipment running? And our answer is, based on whatever that is, we try to give the truth of the matter that you probably can. But then we start asking the other questions, such as, well, what's your maintenance overhead look like?
Right.
And if you could reduce that maintenance overhead, what would your books look like? Or if your maintenance man didn't have to weld pipes all weekend long. I mean, those guys go by the name Patchy because that's kind of what they're doing all weekend, right? If they didn't have to do that, would their quality of life be better? Would they come in Monday morning with more energy? Would you be able to get to the preventative maintenance side and get ahead of repairs? I think ultimately that's what we have to do, is lay out to the customer, here's the things that can be done. Here's how you might consider moving this foundry forward. The other half of those customers we get are customers that have those old machines, but they're also faced with new contracts. There's potential, sales potential out there, and how do they achieve that potential? Have a customer right now that has 3 large contracts they're waiting to see if they can get, and we have gone in with them, looked over their foundry, and said, if you were to expand with one contract, your foundry might look like this, and we provide a layout. We've identified the machines that they're not going to have time to fix if they get this work. How do they replace those? And we've provided layouts 2 and 3, all based on the matrix of what contracts they might win. And you leave this for them so that they can consider what they're going to do when those contracts come in. Those types of expansions are what we're looking at right now. The onshoring that's supposed to be coming in and just flooding us any day now, right, Nate?
Any day now.
Just we're still waiting. But when that happens, those are the questions that will need to be answered, and those customers who are prepared to answer the questions quickly they're going to win the race.
It's interesting to hear you talk about that. It's no secret. I came out of the computer world, and one of the things that we used to do is of course, try to get people to replace older servers. And you'd go in with the idea of, well, how much is it really costing you to run this older server? They required more power, more cooling, more maintenance because things were, older technology, the spinning media, whatever was, things wear out, fans wear out. And how much is it costing you in downtime and maintenance time and just operating costs? And I'm hearing the same thing out of what you guys are doing with this thing. And one of the areas that we moved into, and most, I should say most, probably every computer manufacturer is doing this, is providing the ability for, call it the operator, call it the people that are kind of watching over the computer center, but they can have what we call it, say, a single pane of glass where you could see everything, every machine, see how it was operating, the temperatures it was running at, the capacities it had, everything about it. If there were any kind of notices about failures coming up, hey, I'm starting to see this kind of error on this machine. And they could go in and just, monitor that stuff, and they could repair it in a scheduled manner as opposed to having just something just die on them. So that was one area that where we saw a lot of growth in being able to help a customer out, but also it was a revenue potential for the companies too. Are you guys doing anything that you newer equipment anyway? Are you doing anything along those lines?
Well, and I thought I was edgy trying to use Skibidi 2 or 3 times or 6, 7 or whatever the new thing is, but you're talking Foundry 4.0, which has been the talk of Foundry for the past few years. And the idea of how do we get better? How do we predict problems before they get here? The idea that we can put sensors on bearings and start to identify vibration early on, predict when a bearing might fail, try to get that replaced early. Those are all real things in the foundry industry. Mm-hmm. I think the stall that we often see is we help foundries as small as Jack's initial foundry, the small mom and pop shops, on up to the bigger foundries like GM, NEMAC, etc. The larger foundries are looking at that. They have the capital, the revenue, etc., to visualize that and understand it, conceive it, put it into place. The smaller mom and pop foundries, they're stuck. They, like everybody else right now, they're looking at the industry, they're looking at world events, and they're trying to decide where they're going to invest their money. They're trying to find an investment for that money that makes them feel confident. So a lot of times when we talk Foundry 4.0, when we talk the industrial network, etc., we get held up by the accountants who are on the other side saying, do you really need that extra flashy button that does this, that, and the other? You've got Bob on the maintenance crew, and Bob just walks by there every day and he hits it with a hammer and he verifies that everything's okay. Well, our response to this is one day Bob's not going to be there. Bob's 60 some odd years old. He wants to retire. He's been in the foundry forever. He's beat, and unfortunately, all that knowledge is going to go away with Bob.
Yeah.
Somehow we have to replace Bob, right? And part of replacing Bob, we're making sure that that function still can take place, is to automate it. New people don't want to do that. Young people come into foundries nowadays, and they're surprised that we get dirty. What do you mean I got to go hit this with a hammer every day? I hit it with a hammer every day. Why am I hitting this with a hammer? All good questions, but the one thing I like about the young people is the drive with technology. The technology, this 4.0. They're also saying, I have a cell phone. Why is it that this piece of equipment can't send me a text when it's about out of sand, and I'll take care of it then? Meanwhile, I can do something more productive for you.
Right.
It's still a tough sell, though. It's, getting this by the accountants, no matter how many white papers, ROI calculations we do, it's still a tough sell.
So I'm gonna put Nate. I'm gonna throw Nate under the bus here. What drives a guy like you, Nate, to look at something like Jim is talking about here? Is a foundry owner that's got a set of equipment that's running, that's making money, that is keeping guys employed. What causes you to go look at newer technology for your foundry?
Well, a lot of times I believe that, it's profitability. If you've got the added capacity, or you've got the profitability that you can throw towards some of those things and be able to dial those in, it makes a big difference. So when you're dealing with different market shares or markets in general that you're dealing with, and the margins are tighter than you'd like them to be, then there's less capital to be able to throw at some of that sort of stuff. So that's some of it. The other thing is, sometimes I think it's daunting for a lot of people to get started with some of that stuff. Where do you get started? You collect the data, and okay, we can all understand a text message, getting a text message saying, hey, the sand silos, it's getting low, and we need to switch over to such and such transporter or whatever the case might be. But a lot of the data acquisition, there's a lot of stuff that goes in the back end that needs to be dialed in. Server there at the foundry and that sort of thing, so that you're getting the data acquisition. So I think those are some of the things that probably are some of the biggest roadblocks. Don't know that that's 100% where that needs to be today, or people don't know that it's available, or who to talk to. More and more articles that are coming out, foundry related. There was one that just came out recently about Faralloy Foundry in up by Wichita, Kansas, that's implementing software called Ignition and things of that nature, which is very, very forefront of Foundry 4.0. So more and more that's happening, I think is going to be it's going to help move the ball forward in the foundry industry, in my opinion.
So is there I guess the question is, do you get to a point? I'm gonna make the rash assumption that you're not as automated as what Jim is talking about at this point.
Sure.
When do you make the call as an owner to replace versus repair?
Whenever you can't get parts easily or readily available.
Okay. Parts availability.
That makes a difference. The one thing about the Palmer equipment, and we run Palmer equipment here at KN Manufacturing, and I've purchased lots of Palmer equipment over the years, and one thing that's great about it is the fact that you can get most of all the parts. They don't really get obsoleted for the most part. Jack was kind of always he was always kind of getting the parts so that they were readily available. So it makes it really easy to keep the equipment up and running. That's the robust part of Palmer manufacturing that has always been the case. Over engineered and built very heavy duty. So, and then when you need parts and you need service, they're there to get it. So it makes it a little bit harder of a sell for Jim to sell his own products, because they make them so robust that they're just kind of like tanks for the most part. So I'd say that
it sounds like there's an opportunity, Jim. Just quit stocking replacement parts.
There you go. We can't get this
a
anymore.
No-brainer.
You'll have to find me something new.
Can a guy like Nate go on an instrument? I guess is that a verb? Instrument a piece of equipment that he's got in his foundry to start taking some of this data? Is there an opportunity to do that, or do you have to replace the equipment with something new that gathers that telemetry data?
No, you can actually you can put sensors on equipment now to gather this data. I think Nate, you correct me if you're wrong. We've talked about this before, but it's that initial infrastructure. You have to have the computers, the servers. You have to start the process, and you have to architect the system to make sure that when you get down the road, the data and the work you've already done continues to make sense and works with the new pieces of equipment that you're putting together. And it's the initial investment, I think, is what concerns people. I'm sure Nate looks at this and says to himself, I have to invest X to just get started. Well, when's my return on investment? And that could be further down the road. Back in the day, 7-year return on investment may not have been bad, but I hear people talk now that they won't do anything less than 6 months. That's a tough hill to climb.
That's a great point about building out the infrastructure, but having a plan. I think that it's not just a matter of throwing a sensor on a machine. It's what am I monitoring? Where's that data going to go? How am I going to look at it? I mean, it's really a much more holistic approach than just let's instrument this, let's instrument that, and just see what happens. So, and you're right. I guess I hadn't really thought about it, but yeah, ROI and a short-term ROI is what people look for. We're instant gratification now.
Yeah.
Everybody.
Yeah.
So 7-year return doesn't seem appealing to people. I'll never see it.
Well, it doesn't. But interestingly enough, I spent some time at Honda in my career, and one of the things I noticed there was they didn't much mind a long ROI. They were always planning way ahead, and they still do. My friends that I still connect with say that they're doing the same thing there. That takes a lot of faith. That takes a lot of Nate would say intestinal fortitude to take a huge chunk of money and start that process, only to know that you're going to see it 5 years from now. It's tough, and in our current world climate, how do you go home and watch the news and not think to yourself, geez, am I doing the right thing with this investment?
I could agree with that for sure. And like I say, I think some of it is probably a little bit of not knowing. Like I say, which metal casting Congress is coming up. And so I'm sure that there's going to be more of that type of topics discussed and kicked around whenever you're dealing with things like the SCADA systems and data that you can get. Once you got the data, what does the data do? Does the data tell the operator a certain thing about what they need to do next, and or prompt them and things of that nature to make things more efficient? So I think that's all coming for sure. I know that the article with Faralloy was very, very interesting about how they dealt with that, and then they were talking about like once they have the system in place, that the ROI is weeks, not months, for a lot of different things that they start to implement as they move the ball forward and they implement their plan throughout the facility. But I think 2 or 3 years looked like that it was according to the article was kind of how it kind of transpired initially from very, very start to getting started, and you could probably spend a couple $100,000 relatively quickly on something like that. So
yeah,
for a large facility, that may be just a drop in the bucket for the budget for sure.
Yeah, but to a smaller one, it's a significant hit, right? I mean, that's money that could go towards salary. That's money that could go towards whatever, and
Sure.
To gamble on that is a I can see where that would be a huge gamble for a guy. Despite any amount of evidence that comes in, it's still a gamble. I'm curious. You guys have talked about Foundry 4.0, so I came out of that industry where new buzzwords, web whatever, web 3.0, web 5.0, those kind of things. How long is this something new, Foundry 4.0, or is that something, was there a Foundry 1.0 and 2.0 and 3.0, or is this something that you guys just invented now for?
Yeah, well, I didn't invent it. I'll be honest, I haven't read backwards to understand where it came from. Sometimes I wonder, like, did we get here and say, well, we have to now define points in history to define where we're at now? I don't know. That's something I have to plead ignorance on. But you're right. It's the buzzword of the day, right?
Is it? Okay. Well, I mean, so if I went to a Foundry conference, I'd be hearing them talk about Foundry 4.0.
Absolutely.
Okay. It's just the first. Today was the first day I had ever heard of it, so I was curious.
Well, and I don't recall. I mean, it's a great question, Perry, because I don't recall hearing Foundry 1.0. So, yeah, I don't know where the 4.0
Well, I mean, Foundry
comes from.
3.0.
I'm sure it was in development somewhere.
Did you hear Foundry 3.0 in the last?
I don't
year
recall.
2 years?
I don't recall ever hearing. Yeah, I don't. But I mean, until it was a more popular thing. I mean, there may have been in the shadows for the most part.
Well, almost a year and a half, 2 years ago, when I think I first started hearing about it, we asked the question, what is it? We had a few folks here go to an AFS event, and they were talking about it. And when they came back, I even asked that same question. I'm like, well, can you define it to me, like what that really is? And the response to me was that according to what they had just witnessed, they're still defining what it is, right? And that was just a couple of years ago.
So I mean, it's just so like the computer industry. We would come up with these, terms like, yeah, we got web, whatever it was, web 5.0, and you'd ask people what it is. Well, we're trying to figure that out. There's an idea. We have an idea of kind of what it looks like, but it's just so funny to me. Well,
yeah. And one of the last things that they talked about, they were still on the buzzwords of Internet of Things and things of that nature.
Oh,
It was
yeah.
kicked around at the last Cast Expo and things like that. So, yeah, I think that's it seems that they're still trying to figure some things out in that regard. What falls into line with Foundry 4.0 and which I think it encompasses all those things, Internet of Things and all those different sensors and components and connectivity and all that data acquisition and what you do with the data acquisition and now AI coming in there to help implement or track things and things of that nature. I know there's a lot of things going on that they're using cameras and foundries and things of that nature for safety violations or just to keep the team safe and things like that. Hey, there's this employee was just for PPE and things of that nature. So temperature readings at certain times whenever the metal's being melted and things of that nature to help implement and remind the operator of those type of things. But again, you have to have an interface for the operator to be able to be prompted for certain things that it pops up and says, hey, don't forget, hey, we need to get a temperature reading. Then they physically take a temperature reading. It goes green and it moves on to the next thing. So all those things I think are coming for sure and are getting kind of the kinks worked out and that sort of thing. I think at some point some of the equipment, and Jim, you could correct me if I'm wrong, but I would think that at some point some of the equipment is going to have some of those features already implemented, just the nature of the way that the components and things are built, that it's ready to plug and play whenever the company or foundry is ready to implement those type of services.
You're right, and what people are going to see if they haven't seen it already. I know that we're already buying sensors for level detection. And it just so happens that sensor already has a thermocouple in it and can tell us not only what level something is at, but it also tells us the temperature. It also is reading humidity in that area. All these things are going on a single microchip, on something very small, and that data can be fed back to the standard PLC and used. It's there. It's just waiting, and I think part of all of this is that interconnection that's happening. We're looking to a system shortly that the equipment talks to each other. It doesn't even go back to a standard point. I'm watching palletizing robots that talk to each other as they're moving around and doing their job throughout the day, and indicating things like something as simple as 5 different pallet robots have passed by one robot, and they've noticed that this robot is not moving fast enough, or it's not where it typically is, and they're alerting the others. They're rerouting their paths, and they're indicating somebody needs to come look at the one robot that's not doing well. It's movies, Hollywood magic in my head sometimes, but that's the reality of where we're heading. Machines that help each other.
Well, Nate, you've had that for years. You've talked about the 3D printers that you've worked with. That you talk bad about one and the other one would quit working.
Yeah.
So,
Tom and Jerry, they were cantankerous little turds.
So it's interesting. I looked up the Foundry 4.0. It is a direct takeoff from a term called Industry 4.0. So that's the Foundry, just moved Foundry to go along with the Industry 4.0. But it's exactly the things you were talking about: connectivity, Internet of Things, sensors, machines talking to each other, real-time data collection, artificial intelligence, machine learning, automation and robotics, cloud computing, digital twins, virtual models of physical processes. And they're moving that, in the Foundry world, it seems to be adopting those principles, that technology into the Foundry. So there you go. There's Foundry 4.0 came from Industry 4.0.
Yeah, so we're in the 4th generation, right? That cyber physical system type thing that we're trying to understand and learn. And it's interesting. I often wonder to myself, I keep asking myself, how can I use AI? How can this tool benefit me? And I was speaking to somebody that programs AI, and we're talking about some projects. And I said to this person, I said, well, it's interesting. So I could have an AI built into my equipment where the operator can ask my equipment a question about what's going on, and it could respond with an answer. And he says, well, yeah, that's kind of the basic way of doing it, Jim, but what if AI was there and it was watching and it told the operator, it answered his question before he had it.
Right.
You got to try to get ahead of everything, right? And it's a fun time to be here. I hope, like Nate said, that the machines don't talk to each other and go on strike or something, and then we have to get them, I don't know,
You don't have
cleaner
iRobot
power.
going on.
Yeah, better oil. We don't like the taste of this oil. We like this oil better. I don't know. Suddenly my
It's all
toaster goes
possible.
on strike and I can't get in breakfast.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Disgruntled equipment.
For me, that's just part of it. I mean, we talked about this earlier too, is the good and the bad. I mean, there are some great things that can come out of AI. Great things about watching stuff and keeping an eye on things and helping your productivity go up. And as you said, that then there's also, take 2 photographs of you and a voice recording, and suddenly you're having an affair with somebody and you didn't even know it existed.
Or they make it up, right? So
Yeah.
then you're trying to decide what's real and what's not. Recently, when we talk about cybersecurity, there was a major medical technology company called Stryker that was hit by a cyber attack from Iran, and I've been reading a little bit about it to try to understand it. It's one of the concerns I think that we have is, as we bring all of this stuff online, as we are able, Palmer is able to, with our customers who've purchased the feature, that we're able to go out and help them remotely with their equipment now, just across the internet. Well, we're constantly looking at that connection, and we're saying to ourselves, and we're asking the people that made the hardware for that connection, like, what are you doing day by day to improve cybersecurity? Because the last thing we would want is somebody to hack into that and take control of a PLC and do something with it, or just simply wipe the data.
Right.
And then
Just
a customer
cripple them.
is down.
Yeah. Well, and again, in my world, you'd have some sites that wanted to be connected to the cloud, the infamous cloud, which opens all kinds of doors towards people getting in. Or you'd have sites that said, no, we're not going to have an outside connection. Everything's going to be handled in-house. And because of that security concern, they didn't want their data getting exposed somewhere, but they didn't want to open the door to someone coming in as well. So, as you guys are building this stuff, I guess it's something to keep in mind is what kind of customers are you going to have?
Well, and we have customers in the aerospace industry where it's there's a very high military presence. We have to be very cautious about basics, like do we carry our cell phones into places when we go to take a tour and help customers out? But not only that, but a lot of these places are telling us they need very secure internet connection, and we have to go through certain servers. Palmer has identified that some time ago. Our equipment typically has a key lock on it that allows access to an internet or not. And most companies that we have this equipment with, when they call us, they say to us, we're going to go out and flip the key. It creates a physical break or connection to the internet, and it's on only because we've called you. We're going to use it long enough to resolve the problem. And then when we're done with the call, we're going to flip that key the other way. Or we're going to just take the network cable out, and we're going to go back to what we were doing. It's just, again, it's kind of something we've baked into the product for some time because we're cautious about that as well.
It's a long way from sand. A long way from sand. That's wow. I mean, that's fascinating stuff. Fascinating stuff for me.
The mixers and all that sort of stuff. I mean, the PLCs and ladder logic and all the stuff that goes into that. I mean, it can get, especially if it depends on if the system gets bigger and bigger and bigger. It can definitely get very, very sophisticated pretty quick. So it's good that Palmer's got the expertise to be able to jump on there and help troubleshoot that sort of thing for a lot of those customers. That's outstanding.
How big is Palmer, employee-wise? What are you guys looking at? Are you all centrally located, or are you sort of global?
So we are centrally located in Springfield, Ohio. Our employee base varies. We've been as high as 55. We've been as low as 20. We kind of ebb and flow with the industry. I think we have to do that. We have to be a bit agile to survive in the industry nowadays. And it's tough to do that. It's just getting out of Foundry alone and thinking about management. It's difficult. It gets worrisome at times. Like, how are we going to achieve the next goal? Do we need to hire more people? We have all the same problems as everybody else, but we also try, like I said, to be a bit agile. We have reps all over the country. We sell into Canada and Mexico as well as Europe. The Internet of Things has allowed us to have communications. It's not uncommon for me to hop on a call at 2 a.m. so that I can be on somebody else's time zone and talk to them about their problems and see if we can help them. So we like to think of ourselves as being able to cover what's needed, right? Decent size.
I mean, the thought, when you're talking about the array of products that you have and the technologies you have, from sand mixers to AI programmers, that's a pretty broad spectrum of talent, and it just seems like a tough way to, or not a tough way. That's a tough thing to staff for. To have that much that diverse a talent pool, that you can have mechanical people that are designing hard machines to do things, to having programmers. That's a pretty broad spectrum.
It is, and it requires us to, I don't want to say think outside the box. Everybody says that, but it does require us to try new ideas and try different things. And sometimes we take risk. to figure this stuff out. Right now, we've got some contractors we're using. That's going to come. It's going to go. It's something you have to do. I think Nate deals with this too, right? You know, when you're running your foundry, you probably are constantly thinking about, do I need to staff? Is that person going to be temporary? Is that person going to be a permanent? Can I contract somebody in and just get it done and turn my hands loose of it? It's a lot of work on a daily basis.
Yeah, we all face those questions for sure. With Palmer, so I mean, when Jack passed, was a big change for the company, and I know there was a lot of unknowns, but I think a lot of those unknowns have been answered just by the way that the team has stepped up and kind of lived out Jack's legacy of what Palmer Manufacturing is today. He's a dynamic individual for sure, and was known, extensively around the foundry industry. Do you got any cool or interesting Jack Palmer stories?
Stories I can tell online?
Some stories can't be talked about. There was a story, one that I recall. There's a Jack Palmer face that he implanted his face into some no-bake sand at one point in time to cast a Jack Palmer face for somebody. I think it was just like a gag gift, but it kind of turned into something.
It did. It turned into, I don't know, the pseudo Jack Palmer Award. I don't know that we've ever named it. He did it numerous times. I always tried to figure out why he, didn't have more skin irritation issues after doing this. I mean, who wants to put their face into no-bake chemicals? But
I wouldn't advise it.
Well, but that was Jack Palmer. That's how he lived. He would see something and he would say, "Why not?" Right? Like he always would say, well, I did it because I guess I didn't know that I couldn't. And that kind of brings us back to the award, right? That he would make these molds of his face and pour that full of aluminum. And they only went out to, I can only think about 5 of them. They only went out to people that Jack truly admired, something big that had happened. He always saved that gift for somebody special. Now, he did a few molds where he molded his hand waving. He was only using one finger at the time. Those were also Parchment Awards that only went out to a few people. But creative, right? Just had fun doing the job. Was always laughing, punching each other on the shoulder, hookers and blow, etc. I think one of my stories was one of the first trips we went on. Didn't know Jack from really anybody, right? He bought the company I was working for. I went with the furniture, and we hop in a car. We land somewhere, hop in a car together, and he says, "Okay, first rule about traveling with Jack Palmer," which I thought he was funny, talking third person. And he said, "What happens on the road stays on the road," and I mean it. So he started these stories that I probably would have trouble repeating now. And I'm driving somewhere with this guy thinking, who am I working for? Where did this come from? It's almost like you came from Hollywood because you just don't seem real, this attitude. But I think that was the attitude that Jack carried in everything that he did. And that's where that energy came from. Jack's always interesting energy. I remember going to foundry shows, and he would say to me, he says, "Listen, you got to realize there's going to be a line of people that want to talk to me." He goes, "It's just part of the gig, right? And we have to get through it." He said, "However, if I start doing something overly goofy, if I start hallucinating or something, you got to feed me or remind me to go eat." And I said, "Okay, Jack, that's fine, but you kind of always act like that. So how do I know when you're really bad?" And he says, "Well, I'll fall off the chair. That's when you'll know."
That's funny. Yeah, I could see how that would be the case, especially at some of those shows. I mean, just on the floor, hours and hours and hours. So hard to see everybody. And I know that he liked to interact with everybody for sure. I mean, he for decades people would you just knew who Jack was. So
Yeah, and he loved that. He loved seeing those people. Every time we would get a phone call from somebody, I'd look in our log and think, well, we haven't talked to this person for eons. We haven't, or I couldn't find them in the log, and I'm thinking, oh, it's a new Foundry or something like that. Jack's always like, oh no, that's an old friend, right? He I don't think he ever met a person that he forgot. Although I did notice, it took me a while. I did notice over time, he could recognize the face, right? But he may not always remember the name. So suddenly everybody was like Tiger and Stud, and there was always some nickname he would give them. And it took me a while, and then I finally cued in my head. It's like, oh, he can't remember this guy's name.
Well, that's
And
a lot
I
of people
usually-
to remember.
It was, but for 90% of the time, he was able to do it.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah.
How
Pretty
old
daunting.
was he when he passed?
Oh, crap. Got me on the spots. 72?
I was
How
thinking the
old
same.
was that?
I was thinking the same number, Jim, when you said that.
Okay.
Yeah.
But you couldn't tell it.
I say that's young for a man with that kind of energy and kind of sort of zeal for life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, I still, he leaves such an impression. I still, on nearly a daily basis, around 5:30, 6 o'clock in the evening, expect Jack to kick my door open, sometimes holding a bottle of whiskey or whatever, saying, hey, we need to sit down and have a talk, right? Just the kind of guy he was, or let's go over here and grab a bite to eat somewhere. Never met a person that he couldn't make friends with, interestingly enough. Just
Yeah.
always that kind of guy.
Yeah. Yeah. And he always he did that bike ride, didn't he? Seemed like every year, or for a considerable amount of years, that he would. It was a fundraiser that he was really passionate about. I think it was a 100-mile bike ride for the weekend or something like that.
So he did that. He hiked to the bottom of the Grand Canyon about 3 years ago.
Yeah, that was
Camped
right
overnight with
before. I
his
mean, that was
buddies.
before he passed, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, just something he had always wanted to do, right? Like, I want to do these bucket list items. I think he had stepped foot on every continent except for Antarctica. There were these things that that's what he wanted to do, and had fun doing it.
Yeah. Yeah, he always had fun, for sure. And, yeah. It's always amazing to me whenever you see kind of the innovation that came into, even like the FMM, the flip mold machine, and just the equipment in general. Because, I mean, mixers, and they can, not a lot of sex appeal with a no-bake mixer. But, I mean, whenever you start throwing automation at things and you start integrating the flip molding machine and the rollovers and all that sort of stuff in one unit, making it more compact where you can get it into a smaller footprint in a facility and things of that nature, it really opens up the door for multiple units and things like that. Different mold lines coming through to increase production and stuff, and it's pretty wild how you get all that stuff kind of together with the team and get it all engineered so that it actually it functions and works efficiently. That's a pretty tall order.
And you have to be passionate about it to do it like that. I don't know how you do it without the passion. If you're trying to do it as a day job, just another, I'm going to punch the clock for 8 hours a day and go home. I don't think you get those types of innovations. I think
No, I
you
don't
have
think
to
so.
be thinking about it. My drive home every day, I'm churning through all of those things, replaying the day. What did I miss? Making a note. Just how can we do this better? How can we do that better? Can we use hardened steel versus something else? What can we do to make it better?
Yeah.
So is that is that mindset sort of ingrained in the company now, or I mean, or does that carried over from Jack? Is that did he have that sort of effect on all of his employees? And is that Palmer today? Is that what Palmer looks like? Just people looking at questions and looking at things and how can we be better? And
Absolutely. We have our standards, but I always have people here coming to me saying, I saw this. What if we did that to our equipment? And you ask that question and you chase that down because people are looking for innovation. People are wanting the next best thing. We're quietly working on a reclamation project right now that I hope will be the next thing. I don't want to go too far into it. Somebody here might bark at me, but we're always asking ourselves, well, if this turns, does it have to turn? If I do have these parts, what happens when I throw sand and glue all over it? Will it still work? Because at Palmer, we want it to be robust and we want those things to work, even though they're in a harsh industry.
That's great. That's great.
Do you guys ever see the need for implementing any reclamation that rides, let's say, under an FMM so that there's less floor cleanup or anything like that kind of moves the sand away? Or is it pretty much just always broom and shovel type process?
It's like every chef has his own kitchen. He has his own recipe, right? It depends on where you are. We are lucky enough to have both sides of that type of situation. We have some places that are happy to, they're okay with the strike-off material going to the floor. They've tuned that in. There's maybe half a shovelful, and it's just part of that operator's cadence, his routine. There's other places that there's a grating, and all of that material falls through the grating that the guys are walking around on to do the job. And underneath is a vibratory component or a belt component that's carrying that stuff away.
Okay. Yeah.
But it is concerning, right? Like, what do you do with the leftovers, the dregs, as they drop and fall? And as you know, sand gets in everything. I bet you can look around your office. There's sand in there somewhere.
Absolutely.
It goes everywhere, and you have to be creative about how to collect it and take care of it, or you just accept that the sand will be in different places and you clean as you go.
Right. That makes sense. Yeah. I mean, and traditionally, I mean, the broom and shovel and just keeping stuff cleaned up as you go is kind of the way that it kind of works. So, yeah.
Right. And as we evolve, as we work toward that Foundry 4.0 that we talked about, carrying that stuff away automatically is going to become more and more important. And you're going to see that more infrastructure built to support those types of ideas, because you can't have it pile up. Your Foundry 4.0 goal is to use less people to do the work. And not everybody's going to want to clean who wants to sweep up in a foundry? That's like the last thing we want to do. Talk to your maintenance guys. They don't like to go into a pit and shovel sand out of the pit. That's the worst job there, right?
Yeah, for sure. Which is one of the reasons why nobody likes pits. So, yeah.
Yeah, one of the worst four-letter words in the foundry.
Yep. Pits are the pits. So, yeah, for sure. So, do you guys have very many FMMs in production, or is it something that's obviously they're all made to order, so it means you're not going to have a lot of those, just sitting there in whip and that sort of thing.
Yeah. So, FMM and the UMM, U standing for Universal Molding Machine. There are, 10-ish out there. We've just sent another one out the back door last week. So they are out there. I think our biggest win was WearTech up in Washington, up in Spokane. And we were good enough to have an individual there, Brandon Roy, write a pretty in-depth summary of the install for the powers that be up there. This was not sponsored by us. This was something they did internally and gave us a copy of it. And Jack was over the moon with it when he read it. Just was so happy and proud that this took off. And made a special trip up there to shake Brandon's hand. And I remember one of the stories Jack brought back was he said, we're standing around the machine, we're watching it run, everybody's happy. And he says, kind of at the end, as we're all kind of getting back to our typical day jobs, one of the workers came over to Jack, shook his hand and said, I want you to know that, there are certain incentives we get based on production and such. And this machine has not only improved my incentive that I receive, but I go home at night and I don't feel totally exhausted anymore. And Jack smiled, and I remember him telling me this story and smiling. He says, yeah, it's not only the money, Jim, right? It's the quality, the quality of life. What a fantastic thing that I've helped somebody, right?
Sure. Yeah, wow. Absolutely. Yeah, that's super helpful for sure. When you can implement industrial processes and equipment that actually makes somebody's life and their job easier. Yeah. So yeah. That's immense. So yeah, pretty wild. Any really cool stuff that you guys have coming up the pipe, or anything that you guys are gonna showcase at Metal Casting Congress?
I think one of the neatest items that we're working on now with another company, and most of our work is just trying to get the word out, to be honest, and that is something called the thermal analysis system that has been developed by Solutions Foundry in Canada. We're lucky enough to partner with them on this, and it's a system that predicts grain structure within about 6 minutes of a pour. So if you can imagine, you've cooked your material, you have it in the crucible, the guy working the deck is ready to consider pouring this into the molds. It used to be you had to have your lab tech come out, take a sample. They'd have to run off, cool it, grind it, polish it, cut it, do all these things to it, then analyze it, bring all that data back to try to figure out if they need to add a modifier, if they need to do something to the melt to improve flowability, to improve grain structure, etc. And that took a lot of time. Well, this piece of equipment, you can pull a sample of the material, put it with this equipment. This equipment returns a result in about 6 or so minutes. It can all be done by the guy on the melt tech. The lab tech doesn't have to come out. And it can even suggest modifiers for the melt so that he can improve the melt and immediately pour. This prevents the modifiers from cooking off as you're waiting for results coming back. It reduces this lab tech from having to come out, etc. And all the data can be fed back to an industrial network where it can be tracked automatically. So again, you're not losing papers off of a clipboard in the foundry. It's fantastic, and I'd encourage everybody to pick up a brochure and look at it. They've started with tuning this for aluminum, but they are experimenting and working to modify it for bronze, copper. They've got an experiment going on with steel, etc., to create a more robust system.
That sounds intriguing for sure. How does the sample get pulled?
The operator or the person on the deck usually has a small scoop, and they can just scoop that out and pour it into this piece of equipment that can sit within 5 feet of the furnace.
Okay. and they're used to doing that anyway if they're checking other samples as well for spectrometer, chemistry, and that sort of thing. So, okay.
Sure.
No, that's interesting. That'll definitely speed the process up instead of having to polish and etch and everything else for looking at grain structure.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. Well, cool. Well, Jim, we really appreciate you taking the time to link up with us and discuss Palmer manufacturing and all the things that you guys are currently doing. It's always interesting to hear about the new technologies or not internet. I want to say internet, but it's Foundry 4.0. Internet of Things is what I was thinking of. But it's always helpful. We can most everybody they can go to palmermfg.com and check out your website, any of the equipment that you guys are putting out or anything like that. We can you guys are available on social media and LinkedIn and things of that nature as well.
Yeah, and don't forget we have our magazine that we try to produce a couple times a year, Simple Solutions That Work, and it's a chance for people in our industry to submit an article that is specifically pointed toward, I have a problem, I found a solution, this is what we did to resolve it. And it's a great way to give your maintenance people a chance to read through something on lunch, on their spare time, that helps them do their jobs better. And that's our goal, is we're all in it together and help each other out.
Sure. Simple Solutions That Work. And that's simplesolutionsatwork.com?
That is on the front page of our website. I think you can
Okay.
find a link to that.
Okay. So scratch that website. That may not even be the case.
Maybe it should. Maybe I should make a note here real quick and go out and buy that domain quick.
All right.
Get
Well,
it
Jim,
before
thank
she
you.
gets
Thank you
gone.
so much for your time. It's been, for me, it was a fascinating discussion. So I appreciate you enlightening us, filling us in on what's going on, and especially I'm kind of fascinated by what's going on at Palmer. So thank you.
Well, I appreciate it. I appreciate you guys having me. Thanks.
You bet. We'll talk soon.